So, Aaron, last week we were talking about emotions, survival systems, reacting in big ways to what was happening during the divorce process. And this week we're going to talk about why divorce feels like a death often and how it takes us not into our anger, but our grief and perhaps a questioning of like, who am I now? I'm curious, Aaron, why do so many men say divorce feels like a death, even when nobody's actually died?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. You would hear from guys that are going through divorce that it feels like death. Is the death of identity that we go through with the ending of a long-term relationship and, so much of our known experience and connection with the other person, our ex-wives or whatever, so much of that is tied to our identity, or we tie so much of our identity to it. It's like we're not an individual anymore. We are a part of a unit, part of a couple, part of, I identify as the husband, I identify as the father of this unit. And, divorce comes around and it's like, not anymore. It's not just the question that comes up in our mind. It's like facing a wall. It's like running into a wall of who am I now? I was very confident and very connected to what I believed to be my identity as husband, as father. And there's a connection between, a husband and father as husband, right? As opposed to father as just me, father as husband. And and then all of a sudden it changes. All of a sudden it's like, hey, this isn't the thing anymore. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think. It's not just a question that I get to sit and contemplate and think about and come up with an answer. It's like, who the fuck are you now? And not having an answer and not having and feeling like I don't have any time to answer it. And and it's like I don't know. And now I'm supposed to take a step into the world without knowing the answer to this question feels like chaos.
Yeah. And why is it, do you think that men are so unprepared for this part of the process?
I think a good part of it that comes in, and that is a lot of social conditioning that we go through, a lot of environmental influences. What I mean by those things is like this is what we grew up with. This is culture and society as we know it. You know, like there's a whole lot of push on the we call it the relationship escalator. Like you get together, you get happy, you get married, you have kids, and then what I mean? It's like if you're one of the lucky ones, you'll be married for 30, 40, rest of your lives. And there's a new thing that we get to talk about later about the silent divorce when it comes to those long-term relationships. But in the meantime, it's like you buy in, you go all in. And and for 15 years it seems like, yeah, this is great, this is perfect, this is what we're doing it. And then year 16, 17 comes around and I'm talking about my own experience, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, not anymore. And not only not anymore, but you know there's a lot of things about the relationship that you thought that I thought that I'm being told different now. you know and it's like, whoa. So not only is it not anymore, but also like everything I thought that it was might not have been entirely true either.
It's just why are I think you're speaking to it as why are men so unprepared for
Right.
this
Sorry.
is because it's not often that we change our identity,
Right.
right? Like at least for I think our generation as Gen X or millennials, like that idea of changing jobs every 3 years, like that's very different than what we grew up with. Changing cities, changing even career paths, like not
Yeah.
just the job, but the career path.
Yeah, one of the epidemics in in the male driven patriarchal type of societies that we live in, one of them, and I'm not just speaking of this, is the identity that we attach to our jobs, right? Like this was a big thing. So you would, you'd be at a job for 30 years and then you get laid off. And that was a very that's a form of loss of identity. A lot of guys go through the shock of their system of, well, who am I now if I'm not working here, kind of a thing. And so, and we hear about that a lot. We hear, because there's such a connection to identity with the job. I remember hearing about that a lot in my 20s and 30s, like, oh, this is happening. This is like an epidemic in life, because a lot of companies were getting rid of the older employees and replacing them with younger, and then this was happening. But the real impact was that they don't know who they are anymore because of the association, the attachment they put to the identity of the job. Like, who are you? It's like, well, I'm a machinist, or I'm a engineer, or I'm a this. It's like, right. And in this sense, it's like, well, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I am the husband to this relationship. And then divorce comes around, and it's almost kind of the same thing. It's a jarring, unexpected, this is not it anymore. And there's a lot of fight around that. There's a huge amount of resistance to it. And then once you get to the point where the fighting doesn't work anymore, or you're too exhausted to fight anymore, and you finally get to, well, I am not this anymore. This is not who I am anymore. Like, okay. And now the question that hits them is, well, who am I now? And the immediate response, I don't know. And here we are, like, oh, welcome to the unknown. Welcome to the unknown. And on many different levels of work, emotional work, men's coaching work, or therapeutic work. Like, we know that the unknown is one of the scariest places to be. It's disorienting. There's no foundation. I don't even know where the ground is underneath my feet. And yeah, welcome to the unknown. And what I like to, help my guys understand is like, well, the unknown is a really beautiful place. It opens up the realm of endless possibilities. And once you regulate your nervous system while you're there and actually start looking, then it's like, well, it's not the question isn't who am I now? The question is, who do I want to be? And now we lean into the power of choice. Now we lean into the power of, like, well, and some of my guys are like, well, 25 years ago I was really wanting this thing in my life. And it's like, yeah, well, what would it look like to bring that in here now? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, look, direction. And it's not a direction that's been given to you. It's a direction that you chose. And it's beautiful.
Before we go into kind of
The other side.
that idea of choice, I'm going to hold us here in the muck. One of the things that you talked about was grieving the loss of identity, the shift out of husband or father in the way that all of us grew up watching, right? As like the fairy tale romance. I'm also wondering about the grief of the loss of the future that I had imagined and pictured
Right.
in my
Yep.
mind of experiencing with, family vacations and holidays and family trips and, maybe buying a house together or redecorating,
Oh,
whatever it is.
buying a house together, um, going to all of our children's weddings together, having grandchildren together,
Yeah.
having a quiet retirement together, uh, going on vacations together, seeing the world together, like all of the things together.
So how does that grief, whether it's the loss of identity, the loss of the future, whatever is there, like how does that grief show up for men after divorce? And do they even recognize it? Would they even call it that?
There's a lot of resistance to it. There is the, oh, well, I need to get angry before I can get sad, um, cycle that happens. And so, and it's almost like, hey man, how are you doing with grief? And that could be a very triggering question. You know? I've seen that to be a triggering question, because it's like, no, I'm not ready for that. Some anger driven responses I've seen to that question about are you ready to grieve are like, fuck that, she doesn't deserve my grief, you know, because they're still angry. But yes, as you're talking about like all of the all of the fantasy, and I hate to say it like that, all of the hopes and dreams and thoughts and plans and goals of the future, all of a sudden it's like, well, all of those things can't come true if we separate now. I don't know why this is coming up for me, but just last night I was talking to somebody and uh, helping a man, and it was like, I'm choosing not to believe that she's done. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't want them to be delusional, but also if in the beautiful ownership of that statement, it's like, okay, well, you understand what you're choosing, and and then there's clarity with that. So it's just cycles of whether they're ready or not to face it.
And how are there any other ways that the grief shows up? You said hurting, sadness.
Well, there's also a lot of fear and anger that comes with the grief. I'm not going to quote the standard typical, you know, cycles of grief or the steps of grief, but what I've seen with guys, there's resistance. And the body is afraid of the pain that's coming with grief. And to avoid that pain, there's going to be a lot of resistance, and resistance will produce the anger response. Because if I can be angry and I can vilify my partner who has left me, then I don't have to be sad about it. I can just be pissed about it. And then there's fear, right? And we talked about it a few minutes ago, but the fear of the unknown. It's like, I'm in this place where I've lost, or I'm losing this relationship that I thought was real or that I thought was going to be forever. But what's scarier is what's on the other side. What is terrifying and the fear is now I have to start over. Um, the big one that comes up almost 100% of the times, I'm afraid to be alone. I've spent my entire everything that I know about being an adult has been with her, and I don't know how to be alone, and I'm terrified of being alone, and I'm terrified of being lonely. So those the fear that comes in with it. And I want to say, like, anger has its purpose, and it's protecting us, and the fear is definitely real when it comes to the unknown. But when we really tap into the grief, when we really tap into all that, and the way I navigate grief is not just about, it's not just about, um, it's not just about the bad things, so to speak, the quote unquote bad things. Um, I take my guys through grief in a way that brings everything in. It's like it's everything. It's not just one thing. It's not just I miss the connection, I miss the touch, I miss the intimacy. It's like, no, we're not just gonna, what is it that you never said that you always wanted to say? And that goes into the cycle of grief. Um, through my I go through an exercise called leaving it at the table, which anybody who signs up for the program will fall in love with after they hate me for it. Um, yeah, grief is a huge thing, and we bring everything.
So inside the program, you've got specific protocols and tools to help people process that grief.
Yeah, we as a group we hold space for it. We know guys are hurting, so we definitely have our ways of holding space for that. And then also exercises and practices that are like, okay, you know, we're gonna face this, get to the other side of it. And the other side of the anger in this process is closer to grief, and the other side of the fear around this process is getting even closer to grief. The other side of grief in this process is, oh, what's next? Is the beginning of walking forward into the new you.
Is there a step in there for the void? Because I've heard you talk about the void that men can fall into, and I'm curious
Yeah.
to hear you talk more about that.
Well, it's not so much about the void that they can fall into, but it's the void that they're avoiding. Like, I want you to go to the void, right? Like, and the void is scary. The void is another representative of the unknown. It's like, well, no, over here where I am empty, where I don't have all of these protections, right? So you imagine in the coupling, in and the identity that you have attached to in that's the husband of this unit of you and your wife, or you and your partner, um, like absent of that, it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm not whole anymore. And so what I say is like, well, what are you filling your void with? There's a void. And so talking about that is like, well, you can fill it with things like the same relationship with all the same patterns and red flags, falling into the same patterns, um, using other people to complete yourself. All of this external grabbing, like I'm not complete, and I need all of this to make me feel complete. And so what I help guys with the void is like, okay, we're gonna sit here in this emptiness. We're gonna sit here in this sense of incomplete, and using only the resource of you, let's see what we can let's see what we can fill in. And what my guys tend to learn is, oh, I can fill this with I can feel everything I have from within.
Yeah, beautiful. So what I hear you saying is the void is not the problem, it's how men try to escape it. That is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not escape it, fill it.
Fill it. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's what they're trying to fill it with, which is all external as opposed to internally. Imagine that. Imagine being able to fill your own cup, so to speak, to um, be responsible, be accountable for all of your own things, to not have that to be dependent on anyone else's words, on anyone else's validation, on anyone else's, um, you know, um, doing that for you. Imagine the power, the empowerment that comes in with, like I I can ask for help when I need help, but that's me doing that. And as opposed to I'm incomplete and I'm lonely and I'm missing these things because out there hasn't come in yet. And it's like, imagine stepping into the world being the master of your own universe.
Are you quoting He-Man?
I was totally quoting He-Man. Absolutely, 100%. Uh,
I've got a question here about escaping versus integrating, but I don't think that's I think you've touched on it enough. But I do want to touch on something that you wrote about on the blog at
oh, yeah.
divorcetodirection.com, which is, some guys are going through grief and they're feeling a lot, and then they have positive coping strategies. And can you tell us about when those positive coping strategies, like what they are, when they're helpful and when they're not?
Right. Well, I want to say, as a blanket statement, almost, I want to say they're always helpful. The coping strategies are always helpful, because what they're allowing us to do is not react in a way that is destructive, that is detrimental, that is like sabotaging, that is like all these things that we all have tendencies to do. In the face of a trigger, in the face of whatever, we all have our own different avenues of responses, whether that's going into fight, going into the shutdown, going into running away, going into like people pleasing, and so anything that gets you out of that cycle, that's a good thing. However, where it becomes problematic, right, is when those strategies start helping you get away from processing the emotion that is present. So in terms of grief, like, oh, this, I saw my ex-wife. or I saw my soon to be ex-wife, and it brought up this pain in my body where I felt gutted, and it brought up sadness, and it's like, okay, I don't want to spin out of control here. So I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to regulate. I'm going to get my feet in the grass. I'm going to, do whatever this is, and I'm okay. Like, okay, I'm okay. Right. And after, maybe 5, 10 minutes or however long it takes, it's like, I did good. I did good. I didn't spin out of control. I was able to stay focused. I was able to do something healthy as opposed to starting a fight or freaking out or running away or shutting down like I normally do. Like, great. And you also got away from the emotion. And what I like to do with guys is like, okay, in this space, in this connection, like, let's face that emotion. Let's face that loss together, you know, and it's not easy, but once they do, they realize, this is the cycle of facing an emotion that maybe we have spent a lifetime of suppressing. It's like, oh, um, I did that. I faced it. It was hard. It hurt, but I'm okay on the other side of that. Like I got through that. I'm okay. Like, right. Now you processed it. And then the integration part, the real integration part comes, after the processing where it's like, oh, okay. After the realization that you can go through a hard emotion that you have pretty much convinced yourself is going to be the end of all the things. Like I can't go, I can't take a step in that direction because that's going to be the end of everything. Man, woman, it doesn't matter. What I've always heard is like, no, I can't start crying because if I do, I won't ever stop. And they actually believe that they won't ever stop, that it's going to be too much. They're going to completely lose control. And it's like, yeah, and it's temporary, you know? And that after they realize that it's temporary, after they realize like, oh, I felt that and I can get through that and I'm okay. And it's like, yeah, and does that mean that you did it one time? No. But the next time that you might need to go through it might not have so much resistance as the first time. So, and then all of a sudden it's like after, you face it and process it, all of a sudden I don't need that coping skill anymore for that particular thing because I was able to process it. So do you want to spend the rest of your life coping or do you want to go through it and not have to?
Yeah. And so once guys, move through the, let's say the more surface level emotion. So they move from the anger into the sadness and the grief, and they're feeling that and they're processing it with you. And I'm so glad you said it because in the beginning I was like, does he mean you just do that once? Like you get through it?
Oh,
No. It's over and over and over and over and over again because we keep feeling things, right?
right. Yeah, we're human beings. We're meant to feel the things. The
Yeah.
emotions are part of who we are.
So, how do men actually rebuild a grounded sense of who they are after divorce in a healthy way?
In a healthy way, it really starts with choice, right? Like that's the thing that I want my guys to understand. It's like, who do you want to be? You know? And it's almost like they were never asked that before. I mean, maybe when you were a kid, like what do you want to be when you grow up? Might have been the last time somebody actually asked you. Because like I asked them, it's like, well, who do you want to be? And some of the things that I teach guys to listen to in that is actually shame. Not to go on a tangent about shame because you know how much I love it, but um a lot of guys will reflect back on their relationship and they're in this energy of like, man, I messed up so many times and all of this and it's like, you a good part of me wants to say to them, it's like, it's not your fault, obviously. When these things happen, it's not about fault, it's not about right or wrong, it's not about anything. There's nothing you could have done differently um, to avoid where we are now, right? And a lot of people have a hard time with that because, like, well, no, but there was that one time that I got really angry and I yelled and all of that, and that's the reason why like all of this is happening. It's like, No. Like, yes, that happened, and I know that that sucks. Um, how do you feel about how do you feel about that happening? And instead of facing the consequences of that happening, they actually face the emotion that they feel around that happening about the behaviors that they did. And so now they're in this place of shame. And it's like, yeah. And, we give shame such a hard time, but it's like, hey, this thing's here to tell you who you want to be. So if we listen to it and I ask you who you want to be, part of it starts with like, well, I know who I don't want to be. I don't want to be an angry, violent, pick your poison. And it's like, okay, well, there's going to be work into growing out of that. And that becomes one of your North Stars. And one of the tools that I bring up in my steps is tapping into the inner father, learning how to learning how to recognize yourself as the father of your own internal systems and to your own, inner teen and inner child who are going through a lot of shit right now through this separation, through this divorce, and ultimately learning out a way to tell yourself it's okay, I got this.
So I had asked like what actually helps men rebuild a grounded sense of self after divorce. And you talked about facing the emotions and moving through it and choice and being able to choose. And also I love that idea of like bringing in your inner father. And I know that was a really powerful part of the program for the guys
Yeah.
that I spoke with. How long does this normally take? How long does rebuilding your sense of self take?
Well, there's a in the program and out of the program. um, I mean, I'll be honest. I have met guys over my time in pursuit of this work that have been stuck in it for years, that are still latched on to the old identity, that they're still scrambling, that they're still suffering in that way, still reeling from the old relationship, the past marriage. Years passed since it happened. And guys that go through my program, like we get you on a good solid foundation moving forward in 3 months.
And is that it? Like guys are done after 3 months
No,
or
no, it's essentially it's almost like, you know, we're gonna give you all the tools that you can use moving forward. Um, and it's not like, oh, didn't actually solve any of my problems. Like, well, no, we do a lot of very intense work in that short amount of time, and you get a sense, and you have a north star of who you are. Um, and you recognize like, oh, it's not um it's not who am I in through the perspective of the rest of the world. It's who am I from my perspective. And that's what we give them. And does that mean that the rest of their days are going to be amazing? I mean, I'll be honest. I hear from some of my guys that just, thank me. Like, bro, my life is so amazing. Thank you so much for this. And I'm like, well, I mean, I say thank you, but also like, they're doing the work. They're the ones, pursuing the life that they chose. And and then also sometimes it's like, hey man, I'm having a hard time. Like, okay, life is life. Anybody who promises you that the rest of your life is going to be simple and easy, it's like, well, that's snake oil, right? Um, but for this program, it's like, specifically addressing like this part of who are you. um I help you feel the impact of not being what you thought you were, or not being who you thought you were in the marriage, in the connection with your ex. And I get to I get to help you see I get to help you see who you are on your own, and how solid that can feel, and how empowering that can be. um yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Um, One of the ways that I will often say this is kind of like, if you hadn't taken a shower and like we could shave your head, we could clean you up, give you a deep shower, give you a massage, like get you into much better shape. It doesn't mean that you're not going to shower again in your life. Like you're not going to need to shower because
Right.
life gets messy, right?
Yeah.
And there's all these things that kind of pile up inside of us. So for a man who's watching this video right now and maybe feeling that sense of grief, maybe they're still in the anger phase, maybe they're feeling that loss of identity. What do you want them to know right now?
What I want them to know for that guy who's hurting, the guy who is feeling the loss, the guy who is not sure who he is anymore, um, coming out of going into divorce, coming out of a marriage. What I want them to know is, hey, well, first of all, you're not alone. You know, there is help. Programs like mine exist. And um, on the other side of who you really are is endless possibilities. You know, what I want you to know is, I mean, if I could just instill everything that I know about this into that guy who's hurting, it's like you are enough, you are not alone, you are worthy and deserving of everything that you have ever dreamed of, and uh, and yeah, and I'm here to help.
Amazing. I have this sense of like just wanting to share, just because you're feeling lost doesn't mean you failed. It might just be you're between identities.
Yeah, between and one of the things I like to say, it's like this is the this is how do I say this? Let me get it right. Um, stripped away from everything that you thought you were and taking those new steps forward and going through this program is your becoming.